So we all know the Terminator, we all know the Governor, we all know Arnold Schwarzenegger, but how much of his life do we actually know? What drove him to become Mr. Universe? What drove him to become an action hero? What drove him to become a governor? Well, my name is Marcus, this is Discover Ignite, and today we're talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, Total Recall. So let's get started. So I don't know about you, but I've always grown up idolizing Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I think just about every boy did that grew up in the 80s and 90s. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger was this figure, right, that you were just astonished, right? Especially at his size, to be Mr. Universe. You know, everybody, you know, models their workout plans after Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, everybody, you know, wanted to be that action star in the 80s because he was so big. And then, you know, he became a governor. You know, he had ambition, right, to do more, to be the best. And that is something that I truly admire and something I've always loved to see in Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, and I wanted to actually get a book that was, you know, a little bit more in depth, because I've always seen, you know, the highlights of his career, but I wanted to know where he came from. And this book, Total Recall, you know, it goes back to his childhood. It goes back to when he was in a little village where, you know, he had these crazy dreams and ambitions about becoming a movie star, and you know, just telling everybody that yes, that's going to be him one day. And people were like, there is no way that's going to be you. You're in this small village. Like his dad was a police officer, and that's what his dad wanted him to do. And that wasn't his dreams, right? He wanted to be Mr. Universe. You know, he wanted to live, be the greatest bodybuilder of all time, and he set his mind to do that, and he did that, right? He went out and achieved that, and especially at a time when bodybuilding was just so far out there, right? Nobody was big into bodybuilding. Even nowadays it's not really quite acceptable, right, to be a bodybuilder. And even back then it was even harder, and this is what he wanted to do. And he set out and he achieved that, and he worked so hard. And through this book you see how much he works, right? He works all these part-time jobs on top of working out all day to try to become Mr. Universe. And he's always constantly, you know, trying to improve himself and go to school, and you know, coming into the US when he was first trying to become Mr. Universe, and he couldn't hardly speak any English, so he would study all the time. He was just constantly trying to improve. And then once, you know, he became Mr. Olympia, then he just, you know, he didn't want to do it anymore. He wanted to do something else. And then when he started taking acting classes and started, you know, trying to, you know, become this action hero that we all know and love, and just his hard work and dedication, you know, people were telling him he couldn't do it, you know, he couldn't hardly speak English, and to see, you know, there's one point in the story where, you know, he's getting this particular role, and the actor said he had to lose, I think, like 30 or 50 pounds, something like that. And at the time he was going for Mr. Olympia, so he had all this extra weight on, and so I think he had like 2 months to try to shed all this weight, and he's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But you know, he imagined himself losing that weight. He imagined himself as more of a fit type physique as opposed to this big muscle-bound physique that he had. And he did it, right? The day they were supposed to shoot, the director said he was going to weigh him that day, and if he didn't weigh that day, he had someone else in mind who's going to replace him. And come that day, he weighed exactly that. He weighed the weight he was supposed to weigh, and he got the role, which led him on to bigger roles, obviously, in his career. And then it goes through his life, and he's just constantly, you know, no matter how much success he has, he's just always still learning, you know, he's always still hungry. And that is just truly inspiring through this book, to see that, to see his drive, and to see how it really doesn't slow down at all. You know, even, you know, after his famous action hero days, you know, he became the governor. He still had more he wanted to do, more he wanted to achieve in completely different realms, right? They were never the same. And that in itself is just inspiring to see that, you know, a lot of times I, even myself in my life, will get burnt out on something and will go after something else and will give it my all because that's what I want. And to see that reflected in his life is amazing. And that's why I love this book, because he just is nonstop, always learning and always pushing and always driven to do what it is he wants, and he won't allow nothing to happen in his life. So as far as any cons for the book, I think towards the end it got a little stagnant, and that maybe just because you get used to him striving to become Mr. Universe, right? And all the hardships he went through during that part of his life was it was very intriguing, because a middle-aged man, you always idolized Arnold Schwarzenegger for his fitness, right? And then to see him become the action hero that you always saw in the movies, you were just so excited, right? So it was interesting and intriguing to see him go through all these different movies. You're like, oh, I remember watching that movie, and he's talking about these different movies he was doing, and a lot of behind the scenes stuff. So that kind of stuff was very intriguing. And then when he started becoming this governor, it was completely different, right? Because it pivots on a completely different realm. And so it's interesting to see, right? So to me, it got a little stagnant during that time, but it was still really interesting because he was always driven throughout the whole book. Even, no matter what he did, he was always driven and always had, big goals. He always aimed big. And so it was very interesting to see that. And again, a good reason why I love this book so much. So if you are always wondering about Arnold Schwarzenegger or really intrigued about his story, I highly recommend this book. This book is called Total Recall. I will leave it down in the description below so you guys can pick up a copy. And again, if you are a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I would highly, highly recommend reading this book. Or if you're just looking for someone who's been driven who's essentially executed on everything that they have put their mind to in their life, I would highly suggest this book as well. So again, if you do like this book review, smash that like button. And until next time, I will see you guys later.